Whispers of Wisdom, where we journey together through ancient wisdom and hidden practices, seeking what lies beyond.
There are some stories that don't just heal the person that lived them, but they become medicines to others. While most of us are living a fast-paced life, moving mindlessly into success after success after success, at 28, Upasana paused. Diagnosed for 0-stage breast cancer, Upasana's body was screaming something to her. And that's when her journey began. A flight attendant for 14 years to a nutritionist. That's the journey. Today I have with me Upasana Bijur on Whispers of Wisdom. And we're going to talk about body, emotions, health, food, and a lot more. Upasana, welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. It's such a pleasure to have you. The first time I saw you in your cafe, Natureville, just eating your food, feeling the atmosphere around. And then I was talking to my friends and I was like, who runs this cafe? And then you walked by. And I could see not just health, very visible, but also something more integrated. Something that was well with you. Something that gave me an assurance something is well with the world. And that curiosity has brought us to this conversation.
Thank you so much. I love being here and I remember that conversation with you in the cafe.
So, flight attendant, that's how your journey started. You were just 28. It was a routine medical checkup one day. Just like I worked briefly in the airline, so I know that medical checkups are an important part of, routine, and every year you have to get it done. And you had one of those.
Yeah.
And what happened? I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, I was living my life, flying for an international airline, eating everything, enjoying my life. I happened to be in Bangkok for a layover, which is a night stop. You land there and you have 1 or 2 days off before you fly back. And I was so tired of going out to eat the street food or partying. So I decided to do something different. And I went to, there was a really good hospital there. So I did, and we were covered in that hospital. And it was one of the best places where people from all around the world came for any kind of diagnosis. So there was already a talk around in the crew that if you go to Bangkok, go for a health checkup there because they're really good. So I took a break from the partying and went for a health checkup.
What a choice to make all of a sudden, right? In Bangkok.
In Bangkok.
Nobody would even imagine.
Yeah.
So you said today no partying, today we'll just go for a health checkup.
Yes.
Okay.
And, or I was going partying after the health checkup.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were really good. They were really good. They had so many different language speakers because people came from around the world. And she did an ultrasound. I just wanted a general checkup. And to get insurance coverage, you need to say that you have an issue. So I said, okay, I have some aches and pains. And they did a sonography, ultrasound.
Was there an ache and pain in the breast? Or a discomfort?
It was, the intention was to get a health checkup. As every girl goes through PMS symptoms before period, I mentioned only that because it wasn't anything that was visible to me.
Yeah, like a tender breast, you're feeling heaviness, the
regular. And that's something I always had. So it wasn't something new to me.
Okay.
And she was going at it, the technician. She found something. And I think she spent about 20 minutes just trying to look at a screen and apply more gel and go through with the ultrasound. And she kept looking at it and she kept going at it and she said, there is something. And, you always hear people saying there was a cyst. And
it's benign. It's very common.
Very common.
Yeah.
And so that was done. I went to change. I came out of the changing room doing the formalities. She came running behind me to tell me, it looks dangerous.
That soon?
She knew I wasn't taking it seriously.
Okay.
So that's why she came back to tell me it looks dangerous.
Right.
Take the reports and go to a doctor.
Wow. Okay.
Next, I think in 2 weeks, I was coming to Bangalore. So I got the reports. I came here. I did a biopsy.
You did a biopsy.
Yeah, so they take a piece of fluid out and they test it. Again, that looked abnormal.
Okay.
So the doctors here in Apollo said, let's go in for a... Then they did more checking. They said it's 2 centimeters. Let's take that lump off.
Okay.
Another 2 months later, I did the surgery, took the lump off. At that point, they had also seen small other lumps. That lump was sent for biopsy.
Okay. The 2 centimeter one, the first one.
That was taken out. So I had to go through general anesthesia. They took the 2 centimeter lump off. That was sent to for biopsy. The report came DCIS, ductal carcinoma in stew. So cancer cells are only in the milk duct, that area, not spreading. In stew means in situation, in the location.
Like a controlled
Small.
space. Okay.
That defines the stage, right? That means it's in that place, not spreading, not dangerous or, growing.
Yeah, but it is cancer.
But it is cancer cells, abnormal cells.
Okay.
So that's what DCIS is, a stage 0 breast cancer. So the thing was, I found myself in the oncologist's office. They said, now cancer was very common in my family.
Okay. So you had already heard and
I've
you'd seen people
cared
go through
for
it. You'd cared for.
My mom's
How did you
sister.
feel listening to that as a 28-year-old?
I mean, why is it happening to all of us?
To all of us.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
even
why
to
is
me.
it? I'm not to
why
me,
is
so
it
why
my
is it in the
family?
family?
Yeah.
My grandfather, my mom's older sister, later my mom's younger sister. Why is this happening? And so many other cousins and people, and that's like the common talk in the family. Why? And when you know, I knew it's not genetic.
Okay.
I don't know why I knew that.
And you got that tested?
So,
How did you know that?
just the feeling, this is not something that, because it runs in the family, now it's happened to me. That was the feeling I had. It's not because it runs in the family.
Okay.
There is something more to this. We need to find out, why are we getting this disease or other diseases, but this. And I was feeling that I couldn't articulate it then. I couldn't understand what I was feeling. But I knew there was this constant feeling that there is a part of the puzzle we as a society have not understood. Now, this is a very, very profound, very well thought through, because I've had 9 years to process this. But at that time, I had the similar feeling I couldn't articulate.
Okay.
It was just a feeling.
Right. Did you break down? Did you cry? What was happening?
I don't know what to call it. I call it denial, because that's all I relate to, that feeling of, this is happening, but I don't feel anything. Like, I don't feel like, why me, this, that. I don't feel like I'm about to die. Nothing. No.
And you felt very healthy at that point in time in your body when the diagnosis was made.
Yes, I was very healthy. And, but I knew that things can go wrong. Now, in the oncologist's office, this is like 3 days after the surgery, the oncologist said, hey, you need to take a medicine that will block your estrogen in your body.
Okay.
That medicine you need to take it for 5 years.
5 years.
It's called tamoxifen. Most breast cancer patients are offered that. You need to take it for 5 years. It will block the estrogen. Breast cancer happens because of estrogen dominance.
Oh.
And that could be one reason. And so then you need to stop the estrogen. So my question back to her was, then will I still be a woman?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't estrogen so important as a female hormone? And I knew nothing about nutrition and about, hormones at that point. So she said, you don't have to worry about all those things. Please don't go and Google this.
Okay.
So I said, let me sit on it. I went back to Qatar, started flying.
You were still doing your
I
job,
went back to
nothing.
flying. I had come on a 5-day leave for my surgery.
Okay.
So you understand my mindset, no?
Yeah.
It was very,
How? Where do you think you get it from? Where did you draw that strength, and how did
I
you?
don't know that that's called strength.
But do you recognize that as
No.
strength now?
No. Yeah. No. Not then.
Wow. Okay.
Then it was called like, why are you taking this so lightly?
Yeah.
Yeah. But even my mother, when this diagnosis came, the first thing she looked at it and said, oh God, not you now. Literally in the office, oh God, not you, because she's just now cared for her sister and, all this has happened in the family. So that's how we have normalized diseases.
Yeah, I was laughing because I was just imagining that scene and like, that's a very casual, also has a lot of strength. Oh, not you now. That also means we are ready to do whatever it takes for you to get well.
Yeah. And that's it. I went back, started questioning
Okay.
everything.
Yeah.
Went very deep questioning why. The questions were around what are we missing?
Okay.
I think that's what I was seeking. Like that answer. What is it that we're missing? Why are we getting this disease? Why are we fearing this disease or any disease? And it wasn't very about this. And a month from when I returned after the surgery, I got a book. It was called The China Study.
The China Study. Okay.
I don't recollect where I got it from.
What's it about?
It's about this way of eating and living. It's called the whole food plant-based way. So you're eating wholesome plant foods to keep your body healthy.
Can you take me through your diet before? How did you eat before that?
Because I love cooking and I love, feeding my friends. And I was flying, so I lived with my friends, and I had my kitchen was the main hub where everything was cooked, and I used to feed the entire floor. So I would eat meat and I would eat dairy, I would eat vegetables. I would boil broccoli every day. I had a colorful salad on my plate. I still have pictures on my Google photos when I go back and look at those photos,
Yeah.
It's a very colorful plate still.
Right.
Like there was broccoli, there was...
So it was still wholesome.
It's
It was
very
still
wholesome. I would have
nutritious.
eggs, or I would have like fruits, or, whatever. I would have some porridge for breakfast, and I would have... because I liked healthy food, I would go and get salmon and things. They're very available in Qatar. So I would go and get salmon and some broccoli and some salad and mashed potatoes. I would have dal and brown rice and
See,
sabzi.
anybody listening to this already feels like, so what's wrong with the food that she ate? Yeah. So,
I lived a happy life. I don't take stress.
wow. So emotions were all fine. Life was happy.
Everything was
Food
I
was
was
good.
living my life. Yeah, I was flying around the world. I was going to different continents.
Yeah.
Shopping and luxury and money and everything, and flying.
So what was the answer to the question why?
So my introduction happened through food, and I came across this book which made me understand that I'm going to summarize many, many months into one sentence. And what happened was, I feel like we are disconnected from what nature has intended us to be and to eat. That's my journey.
That's
even
the
now.
wisdom that was whispered
Yes.
to you.
That's what came to me.
Okay.
Because in this book, The China Study, written by Dr. T. Colin Campbell, he's done a population study on China, largest population then, in 1970s, to understand why this population. He did on many, but this was a comprehensive study that was published in a book that showed how this population did not get the diseases of the Western world, especially cancer. So he went into rural China, rural Africa, and he found out that people there didn't get these diseases. But if they moved to America, in a generation or two, they got these diseases. So it was about the food they ate and how close they lived to nature, the community, the purpose they find, and which then came out in books like Ikigai and all that, right? But that's what, and there was a lot of highlight on, he's a food scientist, so he went into food science. And people in these rural areas back then in the 1970s ate more plant-centered food, not animal-derived food. But there was a very, very, very groundbreaking study that he did, which showed, and this might really raise a lot of eyebrows, but this is science and non-sponsored science.
I like that. Non-sponsored science.
No one's
And you don't know
gaining.
how this book came to you, just landed.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Is it a very popular book?
In the nutrition world, in the plant-based nutrition world, it is, because I went later on to study in his faculty in Cornell, which is plant-based nutrition. So his son, if any vegan has seen this movie, Forks Over Knives, all of those movies, you'll see him there. Colin Campbell is the hero of the plant-based world today. And so he shows the direct relationship between dairy and cancer. And I started my day every day with a big bowl of Greek yogurt with berries on top.
That's a breakfast for a lot of people,
Yes.
even today.
Yeah. And I had a lot of cheese, and I loved cheese and, wine. And I loved,
I'm having little palpitations in my heart. Just thinking of all the food that I've eaten.
decode this
We'll
in this
decode
conversation.
Okay.
You don't have to give up not everything. It's about understanding the journey. It's about understanding it, right? So I understood that, very quickly in that book that my food was mainly a lot to do with, it had a lot of animal products. There's a lot of science in that book that talks about how casein, which is the protein found in dairy products, he's done this experiment in 1970s where he gave casein to subjects that had tumors, mostly rats. Later on, we have seen it even in humans. Now the cancer tumors. Casein increased by 5%, tumors grew a little bit. Increased to 20%, tumors grew a lot more. Reduced it, tumors shrank. Playing this game. I think he should have got the Nobel Prize.
Yeah,
What happened? He was thrown out of the medical board.
of course.
Dairy industry is...
It doesn't feed into the popular consumerism narratives. Okay.
And it was very easy for me to change my lifestyle after that.
Okay.
It was very easy.
So you would say that was your one moment in time where you read that, you had an insight.
And then you read consecutive books, and obviously you get into understanding what is food and what is plant-based, what does whole food mean. I was all about that at that point, and then I just kept reading and making those changes. Now I had no, I was living in my own apartment, flying. I didn't have to please my parents, in-laws, husband, anybody.
So this is one big bubble you've bursted for me, which I always felt like cancer is brewing because of repressed emotions, because we are not living our full lives, because we are pleasing people, we are waiting for validations. Now I'm listening to your story and you're saying, I lived my life the way I wanted. I traveled. There was everything, the money and, the happiness and all of that. So what is the role of emotions? Is there a role of emotions
Yes,
at all?
I think so. There's a very big role.
And what might that have been for you? Or do you think for different people it's different?
It definitely is. I'm highly inspired by the work of Louise Hay. And when you look at emotional reasons behind certain things, and I feel I didn't nurture myself. I did.
Okay.
If you look at my life that way.
Yeah. On paper, you did all the check boxes. But then I also know that there is a deeper meaning to nurturing, right? How much of light I'm shining on myself.
It comes down to the very basics. Self-talk.
What is my kind of self-talk?
Yes.
Okay.
How do I view myself?
Yeah.
How content? I may look like very successful, okay, leading whatever, in-flight manager, doing this, doing that, traveling, all of those things, eating amazing food. If my Instagram page might look fantastic, but how am I viewing myself? Because you can be all of that, but you look at yourself with very poor lenses or just with a very pure...
How do you view yourself now, Upasana?
It's very different. It's very different than that. I think I'm still looking at myself like a small baby. I'm still learning. How would you care for a small child, except it's you now?
Except it's you now.
Like how would you give love to a child? Kindness.
Yeah.
Making light of nothing is too serious. You can make all the mistakes. You're still learning.
It's okay. Right?
You're not you don't have to prove anything to anyone.
Yeah. Do you think as we start adulting in life, the focus on us becomes so less and it's more about how other people are behaving towards me? What is my external environment like? How am I showing up for that external environment? And I feel like we reduce ourselves and at some point the attention is gone from the self, like the so-called self-love. I've always felt it's not a day at the spa or, getting your nails done or getting a massage. But I think there is a deeper meaning to self-love. Yeah. Like, how do you view yourself? Do you still have the curiosity? Yes. Is the inner child alive? Are you taking yourself lightly or are you taking yourself so seriously? So when my mom, she left us really early in her 50s. and we were so young. And I think the one thing that shifted for me and my sister was we stopped taking ourselves too seriously, because mom took herself too seriously, not just for herself, but she was the frontline soldier for everybody else. She wanted, justice for everybody. She wanted to speak up for all the voices that had no voice. Her anger seemed justified to her. And she spent a lot of time outside herself, not focused on herself, but for everybody else. Yes, she was definitely the community hero. 1,000 people came for her funeral. Lots of them cried. But the question for people who are alive is, what was it for her when she was alive?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying emotions have a role. Your perspective on food has changed
A lot.
a lot. So now with this new purpose that you found, right? How's life looking to you right now? And you said it's important to find a purpose.
I don't think it's important. I don't know. For me, I can tell you, speak about myself. It happened to me. So when this diagnosis came, my eating habits was the most obvious thing that changed. That was the most obvious thing. But from that, a lot of it branched out into everything else. Mindset, movement, thinking, relationships, everything changed. But the first most obvious thing that changed was my eating habits. I started eating more plants. I reduced and eliminated very effortlessly, and I want to underline that, into eating plant-based food or food that came from earth, like fruits, vegetables, grains, and I made them all whole, not refined. So moved from white rice and things like that to more like brown rice. And I was anyway doing that before, and millets. But, I moved more and more into doing this, and I started feeling amazing. My plates looked more colorful. And, and I started studying nutrition at that point because I was so smitten by this whole world of food. And you know what happened at that time when you're 28, 29, you want to look younger because you're ending this
The 20s.
the 20s era.
Yeah.
And now you're getting into the 30s. So you really want to, and it's the same even in your 30s, I guess. But
We know it's going to be the same for a long time.
so I could see it on me. I could see how I was looking different. I could see how all the bloat around my face and that puffiness, all I went away. There was a sparkle in the eye. It was all from the greens and fruits and beans and lentils and dals and, all of that, eating a lot
So
of
it was
that.
not reintroduction of all this, but elimination of a couple of things.
I think it's a lot of bringing in more than cutting out. Today, when I practice nutrition, my focus is on a concept called crowding out.
crowding out.
Crowding out. That means it's not elimination. Like, you bring in healthier foods, you bring in nutrient-dense foods into your life that automatically crowds out what is not so good for you. So I don't have to think so much about I have to give up my coffee, I have to give up my
You don't have
milk.
to do
You
the
don't have
conscious thinking.
Yes.
It's just
You focus on what you're bringing in. When you bring in good stuff, there is no room for the not so good stuff. It minimizes.
beautiful.
So that's one of the most important approaches I use when I work with clients.
So you're saying plants and fruits constitute the major part of your
Yeah, when I
plate.
say plants, it's no dairy and meat.
No
You know,
dairy
no
and
dairy and meat.
Okay.
And everything else in its whole natural form. So start seeing this. I came back 6 months later to do another ultrasound. And those other lumps that were there, 4 of them, mini ones, they had gone, disappeared.
Oh, wow. In 6 months.
6 months.
Okay.
Now I don't know when they went.
Beautiful.
But from my surgery to my retesting, because to complete that story, and a lot of people might have, so what happened? Did you take any traditional treatment? No, I didn't.
You didn't take
I
any
didn't
traditional treatment?
No, I did that surgery.
Just
I left-
surgery.
I
No
did that
chemo.
No chemo, nothing. She told me take that medicine for 5 years. That's the last time I went to the doctor. Wow. I just went back. The book came to me. I knew I had some other lumps. I made those lifestyle changes, which is food, which was very effortless for me. And I went back in 6 months, did the ultrasound, and the other lumps had gone. So there was nothing there. Ever since, I've done my routine checkups, blood tests, everything. Felt great about it, knowing that it's cleared. I think I didn't have any fear at that point, because eating that way made me feel so good that I knew it was doing some magic.
So it's true when people say food is your medicine.
Yes, 100%.
So do you think not just for cancer, but for almost any disease, it's food first?
Not for disease. Food is the only thing that has the power to make you feel alive. It's something you engage in 3 or 4 times in a day.
Yeah.
And it's meant to nourish the cells. If you just go back to why do humans eat? You eat food which then breaks down into nutrients, which then is absorbed by the cells, and that's what keeps you alive. Now, the quality of life depends on what you eat.
Absolutely. Wow. So, what do you see as a problem in the modern food habits that we have? Do you see, is there a problem?
Yes, I think there's a big problem. I think as we've evolved as a society, food has become about taste and convenience in the larger population.
Yes.
Just taste and convenience, right? We're always like, think of any family in the city. What is the conversation around food? What are you going to eat?
Yeah.
What do you want to eat?
What do you want to eat? Okay.
Right? Is that
Yeah,
that's how
yes.
family conversation around food is? What do you want to eat today? Or what is easy to get or easy to make? Let's say the lady of the house is cooking, then you're cooking what's easy to make. Also, that's what's tasty and what's accepted by the family, right? So those are the 2 things that define food. And now with the explosion of food delivery apps and food that's so easily accessible to us, now it's about what cuisine do you want to eat?
Wow. It's not even the cuisine that you grew up with.
Yes.
You have access to so many
Yeah.
different cuisines.
At least in the city, right? For most of us.
Yeah. I remember growing up in my grandmother's house, meal prep for the next day used to happen the previous day. Like, you bring the greens and everybody is, cleaning it out, or you have these different vegetables you're cutting, cleaning, you're prepping it for the next day. You know what you want to make for the next day. And it's a whole affair.
Yeah.
Grandkids are sitting there,
Yeah.
children are sitting there, conversations are happening, garlic's getting peeled.
We've outsourced cooking now. Either by the cook or through food delivery apps.
Yeah.
So it's something that we are getting very disconnected from.
Mm-hmm.
And the efforts should work towards understanding. I think in both systems, if you outsource it, that's fine. But we need to kind of have a little more control over or understand the role that food plays in our life.
Absolutely. So you've traveled all around the world and you've tasted different cuisine. But there's also the study about eating the cuisine that your ancestors, ate. And, it's easier for the body. It recognizes it. It breaks it faster for you, etc., etc. So what's your understanding of that?
I think that's changed. I think the concept of local and seasonal, I agree with that a lot, but that's changed a lot in the last 20 to 50 years, only because everything travels. Humans travel. People travel for 2 days to New York and come back. That's the way everything is moving so much. Seeds are traveling. Broccoli was not grown 20 years ago in India. It's very common now. Blueberries are grown organically in Tamil Nadu right now.
Wow.
We didn't have the land for it, but we can bring soil. We can create an environment now.
Yeah. So it's nothing local.
So if it's grown in and around your land, it's local. So we have an understanding, there's a gap there. There's a disconnect in our brain that makes us feel like, blueberries are not Indian. No. But if it's growing on your land now, why is it growing there? Because everything has changed. And now food is being grown as a commodity. Food is being grown to yield larger crops to feed more people. It's a business.
Right.
Now, more than farming, it's a business.
Yeah.
So, a lot has changed.
So is there an intelligent way to choose your food? What would you like if there's one little secret or like one little trick or tip that you would give us? How should we eat every
I love
day?
saying this. This is an interesting part. It's very simple. You always want to look at your food. And now let's divide this into we eat for taste, we eat for pleasure, we eat for tradition, for culture, for celebration. And when you're eating for these things like celebration and fun, I don't think that's the best time to really focus a lot around nutritive value, because there are things about, tradition, culture, celebrations, emotions also people, right? So when you're doing that, it's a very different concept. I'm talking about the daily.
Yeah.
Now, let's take a small family, for example. You want to bring these children up, or the family wants to eat healthier. We're talking about everyday breakfast, lunch, dinner of food that's being prepared. Devoid of those functions, traveling, not that, okay? The regular. You want to eat according to how nature intended. By that, I mean, how close is this food to nature? I'm going to give you 3 examples. So it's going to be very easy to understand. First, we eat from this pyramid of what we call plants. And to most people, plants sounds like some grass or some weed growing off the... But when we say plants, we mean fruits, all the fruits in the world that's available to you, that's grown, all the vegetables that you can find in your market, all the grains that you can find in your market or wherever you buy your stuff from, preferably in their whole form. And when we say whole form, I would encourage everyone to understand how the food is grown. This is where it gets interesting. We are disconnected from how food is grown. We don't know how the food looks like.
Right. In its raw
form, on the field.
On the field.
Like, how does rice look like on the paddy?
Yeah.
We have that image, but
Yeah.
we don't know how it comes to this white rice that comes on a plate, right? We don't know how that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Get into that. Understand the food.
Okay.
So if you look at grains, they have 3 layers on it. One is that big husk. Have you seen driving past cornfields and paddy fields? You see the grass? You have the husk. It's not edible.
Right.
Your inner intelligence knows when something is edible or not. You don't need any authority or anybody to tell you this is edible or not. You give a baby a banana, the baby will throw out the banana peel.
Correct.
You don't need to be taught these things.
Yeah.
We all are gifted with incredible inner intelligence, where we know exactly what to eat to keep our bodies in the healthiest state. The problem is we've gone away from that. So eating close to nature is look at how the food is grown, and then understand the processing. Understand from that farm, where did it go next? What happened there? Then what happened? Now backtrack and try to eat food that came directly from the farm without the processing. And those 3 examples are grains, because we eat a very grain-centric diet in our country.
True. Yeah.
I'm from South.
Yeah.
So we eat, right, most of
Rice, dal.
rice is very integral and staple for us. Breakfast, lunch and dinner, whether it's in the form of a idli or a dosa, or it's a rava, a grain. Lunch, and then again dinner, there's some rice. So if you're looking, or maybe wheat. So since grains are so staple to us, try to eat grains that are in its whole form. And today we are very aware of millets, right? Last year was the year of the millet. So millet is actually indigenous. It's what we grew. Rice we stole from China. Millet grew here in our country. So it's very local. Before rice we ate millets. And so millets is really there. Ragi, jawar, bajra, kodo millet, foxtail millet, barnyard millet, little millet, and I can go on. So there's lots, and you just go through Big Basket or any of the apps, you go online and you'll find Amazon. You find all these millets. Buy them in their unpolished form and alternate. Eat whole grains. Move away from white rice. So white rice is nothing but the really polished stuff. You take the husk off. Husk is not edible. Then you have a layer of bran. It's actually not one layer. It's multiple layers of bran. All grains have that. That's the most nutritious part of any grain.
And that's the one that's getting polished.
That's the one that's taken off. When we say polished rice, we take that off. So when you look at the grain, it has that covering on it, like brown rice, red rice, black rice. You see that layer of bran, that's where all the nutrition is. That has the protein, have you heard of rice bran oil?
Yeah,
Comes
yes,
from there.
Yes.
So it has even good fats in it. It has all of that.
But isn't it dense when you eat that kind of rice, which has
We'll come to
more
that.
of this?
It does. It does
Yeah.
make you feel, because when you're eating nutrient-dense foods, you don't need a lot. You can eat very little and be satisfied with it.
Yeah.
And because we're a grain-heavy or a population that's eating a lot of grain, convert your grains into the whole form. That grain went into different processing methods to become a white rice or maida or, the polished versions of it. So when you switch back to whole grains, a lot will change in your body. You'll feel fuller, faster. You'll feel more nourished. You need to eat very little. And there's a very interesting thing that nature does, okay? Food that's in its natural form is not addictive.
Okay.
If you give me a white rice biryani,
Huh.
I'll belt it.
Yes.
I'm a Bangalore girl.
Yeah.
I'll eat it.
And I'll eat it the remaining for the dinner also.
And there were days, I would eat all of it at one go.
Yeah.
So, but you cannot do that with brown rice.
Yes.
Try eating chapatis and then ragi chapatis. You cannot eat ragi. You can't eat more than, no matter how proudly you call yourself as a foodie and you can eat a lot, you cannot eat more than 2 or 3 ragi chapatis because it's so filling. That's what nutrient-dense food feels like.
Wow.
You cannot overeat what is whole. Nature has intended it. Have you tried eating sugarcane
Yeah.
ever? How
Yes.
much can you eat?
I mean, with all the effort and all of that, hardly like
Little bit. Very
3
little.
inches.
What do you get for
Max.
Sankranti? Just a little,
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But it's satisfying, right?
Very satisfying, very
satisfying.
exciting,
Yes.
very playful, reminds me of childhood,
Yeah.
all of those things. Now, how much sugar cane is needed to make white sugar? Okay. To make jaggery. How much sugar cane is needed? So nature has put its high fat and high sugar food in places where you can't overeat.
Wow.
How many nuts can you eat?
Yeah. I
Just
love
not
that.
salted and, fried and all of that. Just nuts off the shell. All nuts come in a shell,
Yes.
So imagine climbing the trees, opening the shell. I love pistachios. But I won't eat those shelled ones because tedious.
Yeah.
So we won't do that. We'll only take enough that's required for that momentary energy. And when you study evolutionary nutrition, you understand how human beings would eat to survive.
Yeah.
And so all of these high fat, you don't find oil in nature.
You have to extract it.
Exactly. So you have to take nuts and seeds,
Wow.
then put it through these really, really intense, hardcore man-made machines
Yes.
that extract only the fat and it becomes oil. And all the good stuff, which is the fiber, which is the, so imagine groundnut oil, for example. Now groundnut or peanuts, very, very nutritious, very high in proteins, very high. We know all about how amazing whole peanuts can be in nutrition.
Yeah.
But you're taking only the fat and making oil, and all that fiber is just thrown away or used for other things.
So are you saying nature has not given us oil, so our food doesn't require oil? You don't use oil in your cafe?
Yeah. We don't have a single oil bottle. Like, no oil, no
And
sugar.
the kind of food that's dished out on plates, I there are kebabs.
Yeah, there's everything.
There's
There's
everything.
There are omelets and pakodas made without oil.
I
and
had
there
your
is-
pakoda.
There are pastas and musakas and biryani.
The pita.
Yeah, ragi pitas and med platters and biryani.
You know, you
and
gave us a
sourdoughs.
couple of pieces, and then I was so hungry. I said, I'm going to be eating all of this. I don't know what these other friends of mine are eating. But the three of us ate it for the next 45 minutes. Like you said, it's dense. It's not addictive. It's slow. And you have to really think about it as you eat. It's not something I can have a conversation and keep gulping and munching.
Mindless
it and
eating does not
it
happen in
doesn't
nature.
happen.
Nature's way of eating.
Okay. All right. So you spoke about the three things. You spoke about plants. Then you spoke about the pulses.
I spoke about, the three things. I'll recap. So I wanted to speak about how, to go back to how can we understand if food is nutritious? Just look at what it was in nature. Very simple. That's the answer. How do you know if something is healthy? Ask yourself, how does it look like in nature?
Yes. See, Upasana, my question is, I want to do this. Like, this is just a common man asking you, right? You've been through a transformative experience in your life. You've dedicated, you see this as, your very thing. Like, there are people like us who will give all kinds of excuses. I don't have time, or like, I want somebody else to do it, or, I genuinely don't have access to that kind of intelligence. I don't know what you mean. Like, I can understand what you're saying. I see there is a lot of truth in that. But like, as a common person, I don't know.
So,
Is there a way to simplify
yes.
it?
You go to your why.
You go to your why.
Why do you want to be healthy? Have you identified that food is one of the most important things to keep your body healthy?
Yeah.
And with the work I've done, I've seen people going off depression medicines, anxiety pills, when they start eating right food in the right time, in the right combinations. And yes, you can use guidance for it. And I definitely encourage using good guidance to understand that. I think it does require, which is why I professionally studied nutrition, because it felt great while I was reading through books and doing it, but I wasn't sure if that's it, and I didn't know how to stick to it. So yes, professional guidance might be needed, but it's very simple to do it even for one who does not want to take that up right now. How do I get started today? So in that sense, then first you go back. It's not so much about how you're doing it. It's about understanding the why before. So if you can understand that food is important for our well-being, then understand why being healthy is important for you, because eating healthy is and can be monotonous. It can be boring. But with effort and interest, then you can, change that. Like for me, I love cooking. So my journey was exciting when I was doing this change, because I really loved cooking. My friends were very worried when I switched to this lifestyle.
Yeah. No,
what are
you
you gonna
become
cook?
what you eat and see
Yeah.
what you've become. Like this energetic spring that is self-generating that much power and awe-inspiring to, people around you. And that aura that you bring in and the light, I think it requires all of us to give that thought to the why of it.
The
Right?
why.
We are always looking at the what and the how of it. The why is often missed out.
And then the answer is very simple. I mean, the more we have complicated health, we have really overcomplicated
Yeah.
health.
It's not so.
It's not at all. And I know, even in conversations like this, people are trying to listen to the juicy, complicated part
Yeah.
of what I need to do.
Exactly.
Everyone
Yes.
wants to know, what is that magic? There is
No magic.
nothing like that. It's very simple. I'll ask you a simple. How many fruits do you eat in a day?
One.
Yeah, increase that. If you're doing 1, do 2. If you're doing 2, do 3. How many vegetables do you eat in a day? And how many raw vegetables do you eat in a day?
None.
So then start. Bring in salads. How much water are you drinking?
Okay.
Are your grains whole or are they refined? How much percentage of it is whole? Because I know now homes, we're bringing in the millet, but that's a one-off case, not a daily. let's do it daily.
No, you're absolutely right. When you spoke about taste and convenience, I'm the convenience person.
All of us are. All of it, nothing wrong about it. We can make healthy food convenient. Okay, we can. It's very easy. It's a matter. My best analogy or example for this is when you switch your career or your job, let's say, even if it's in the same field, you change your job. You've been in a job for 10 years and you go to this new place.
Yeah.
Aren't you going to feel a little unsettled in the first few weeks?
Absolutely.
That's what it feels like in a new lifestyle. When you're trying to do healthy things, it's about that momentary decision. Every time you put a plate for yourself, even if it's made, by the cook or the help, or it's made by someone else, look at the plate and ask yourself, how can I make this more nutritious?
Right.
Put some seeds, put some raw food, like put some cucumber, tomato, onions, things like that.
Yeah. Basically, just introduce the boring, regular stuff.
Exactly. And it's not boring if you want to give it time and effort to learn how to make it fun and exciting like we do at the cafe.
Right. Big question, is sugar bad?
Let's break down what is sugar. The simplest name of a carbohydrate is sugar.
Okay. Yeah.
So a human body requires carbohydrates as its main fuel source. We're not talking about you and me and our blood type, and we're not talking about that. When we talk about human beings, zoom out, look at us as 8 billion and counting. Look at us now and before and in the future as a species, the whole human race. Right. We are one species that belongs to this earth. What does the species thrive on? We thrive on plants. We are herbivores. If you cut open a human body, a herbivore and a carnivore and an omnivore, we resemble herbivores.
Okay.
Okay, so we are survival creatures. So we could eat meat to survive. So nothing wrong in that. If I couldn't, who would eat meat? Back in the day, there's a thing, the hunter-gatherers would eat a lot of meat. Yeah. It's not the case because it's very difficult to go hunt. Then there's no refrigeration. So what is going to happen to that carcass?
It's illegal to hunt anyway.
Yeah, it's illegal. So, and to eat meat. So if you're looking at meat, we were hunter-gatherers, so we would eat a lot of meat. It wasn't easy. It was easier to eat plants compared to hunting and eating meat. The meat consumption increased only after the invention of fire, which was much later.
Okay.
Then with the invention of refrigerators and civilization, that's a different story. But human beings can thrive, not just survive, thrive on plants. Now, the most interesting structure of a plant is carbohydrates. Carbs, which is so unfortunately got this really bad reputation now. I feel really bad for it. Yeah. So 60%, and don't really go down to the minuscule calculation. I'm just look at a pie chart. 60% of your energy or fuel comes from carbs, carbohydrates. Next question, what are carbohydrates? All plants are carbohydrates.
All plants.
They have energy, so there's an energy in it. That energy is called carbohydrate. A sugar molecule is also a carbohydrate. That's the simplest form. So all plants are carbohydrates. Do you know all plants also have proteins? Yeah. All plants have proteins.
Only recently I know that.
So all plants have. So when nature gave you food, it did not break it down into carbs, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals. It's a complete package. So if you're talking about, is sugar bad for you?
Yeah.
If you're eating sugarcane, eat as much as you want. If you're eating foods that have this magic word, which I'm going to use repeatedly from now, called fiber. If the fiber, which locks the sugar inside that food, is present in the food, eat as much as you like dates, figs, raisins, apricots.
Hey, okay.
But my question is, how many dates would you be able to eat?
No,
that's a different story, because that's nature's intelligence. Right? You can't overdo healthy food.
Right.
So if the sugar is in its whole form, eat as much as you like.
Okay. So what is the sugar that we should not be consuming?
Where the fiber is taken away. Jaggery, there's no fiber. Honey, there's no fiber.
No, isn't honey a natural source of sweetness and made by the
It
bees?
may be
and-
natural, but it doesn't have fiber in it. It has the same problem that sugar has. No fiber, high sugar. The minute you consume honey, it just gets absorbed in the bloodstream, and then your body has to process it. So make a lot of insulin. It has to go into the cell. A lot of, like, imagine you walk into work at 9 a.m. and then you're given this big pile of files. So first thing in the morning, you put honey and lemon, and then you look at this big pile of files coming. You're not even started your work, but you're going to be tired looking at it. Again, at 1 o'clock, a big pile of work comes to you. How are you going to feel? Again at 4 o'clock, again at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. And why is jaggery made the noble brother of sugar? Like as if it's okay to consume it. Is jaggery
Industry?
okay?
I don't know. It's just about, it's
Is the same culprit in another form and shape and color?
It's all marketing. Have you ever seen an ad for carrots and gobi and avrekai?
No.
Why are you not seeing ads for tur dal, masoor dal? Yeah. Don't eat foods that are advertised.
Simple other way to figure it out, right?
I'm telling you, it's very simple.
It's very simple.
And it's fun. I think we try to make it very complicated and we think from today I'm healthy. No, it's a journey. You make one healthy choice, you understand it, you experience it, you celebrate it, you enjoy it, then you learn more, then you learn more, then you learn more. And nature will keep giving you the answers if you're listening. And I'm going to tell you something very interesting here. Nature is always telling you something, man is always selling you something.
Wow. We need that as the caption. I love that.
That's the name of my book.
Nature is always telling you something and man is always selling you something. You're writing a book?
Yeah. Nature is always telling you something. Man is always selling you something.
Yeah. Okay. Now, not controversial, but something that I think a lot of us are confused is, what is veganism? What is plant-based diet? What is, and also my personal question is meat an absolute no-no? Because there are viewers who like to eat meat and how much of that is okay, not okay? Is it a philosophy? It is an ideology? And even if I'm consuming meat, is there a mindset with which I need to consume it?
Yeah. A lovely question and much needed to clarify this. Veganism is an ideology. It comes from the concept of not hurting any living being. So it's ethical. But today, many vegans are vegans because of environmental reasons also. Because of animal agriculture, the resources of this earth is depleting. To grow animals as food, we need land, water, and that's leaving us with none for us now and for the future. So even environmentalists are going vegan. But mostly vegans were, the concept of veganism happened because of ethical reasons. And it started with, you look at your dog, you love your dog is a part of your family. Then you suddenly look at the chicken and then you feel like, oh my God, it's the same thing. It had life. I killed it. I don't want to eat. Ethical reasons. Now, lots of respect to that. Let me talk about my journey. I didn't know there was anything called ethical vegan. I went from non-vegetarian, that's an understatement, carnivore to whole food plant-based. I literally ate everything that moved, swam, dry. I don't know, everything. Crocodiles and whatnot, and flying as a crew, it was very easy to experience exquisite meats, and I did that. And I went into whole food plant-based because eating whole, unprocessed plant food, like I said, close to nature, is good for the body. And it healed my body. Like 6 months later, I met somebody who said, I'm vegan. And I'm like, oh, so what do you eat? And they were not so interested about the eating concept. And that's when I got introduced to the thing of, so I saw them, eat chips and fries and, chugging beer. And I'm like, but aren't you vegan? Aren't you vegan? They're like, yes, I'm vegan. I don't know, this bag is made out of pineapple. I'm like, oh, wow. What? Like, I was so confused. That's when I understood veganism is ethical.
Wow. Yeah. No, you said something very striking that when you ask vegans why you what you eat, they will tell you the philosophy of veganism as to why you should not be eating whatever you should not be eating versus what do you eat.
Yeah. So that's the fundamental thing. You got it. You've hit the nail on the head. Veganism, if you're talking only about food, because it's a lifestyle, it's a way of life. If you don't want to hurt animals, you don't use products that have been tested on animals. You don't use fur, leather, silk, honey. You don't use anything that has hurt animals. But if you're talking only about the food, it'll tell you what not to eat. Don't
Correct.
eat any animals.
Yes.
No meat, no dairy, no honey.
Yeah. It's always on the not.
No.
It's not
so
about
what
what
you're
to
not
eat.
eating, right? Because I'm not using anything that is cause harm to an animal. Because that's the ideology
Fair enough.
of not hurting animals.
Right.
Much respect to that.
Of course.
But then coming to eating for health, I like to use the word, as much as I want to de-label things and not have, I have a vegan lifestyle because I don't use things that have animals in it, because I think I grew a compassionate nerve afterwards when I saw that and I didn't know about that. But when you're talking about food, you talk about what you're eating. When you talk about a whole food, plant-based diet, it doesn't mean diet as in restrictive diet. It talks about general as a human population diet. We're talking about what you're actually eating. I'm eating whole. Whole means not refined, no? Like oil is refined, but I'm making nut butter, seed butter. So whole, unprocessed plant foods, which is fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lentils, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, greens. I'm eating everything that grows on our farms, that grows in our agriculture system. In its least processed form. So that is whole food plant-based.
Whole food plant-based. Okay.
That's the word that's used when they're doing research. So today when you look at science or research and you want to see people eating a whole food plant-based diet have lesser diseases or have reversed chronic illnesses using this lifestyle. Not just, they've healed. So I think I've answered your question about what is veganism, what is whole food plant-based. I like to use the word plant-forward, which means, you remember the time when we used to eat meat only on Sundays?
Yes. That was, our ritual at home. Yeah.
And you eat meat once in a while, or birthday.
Correct.
Or this person's favorite meal, so they are coming, so we're making that. It's a very rare occasion.
Yeah.
The whole family is involved in going to that one place to bring it. And if that's the case, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely okay. And if your diet is 90% whole unprocessed plant foods where you're colorful, there's lots of raw, we're designed to eat a lot of raw foods, but today we're not eating raw, which means raw fruits, raw vegetables, lots of nuts and seeds, greens. I start my day with a green smoothie every day. So that's raw greens and fruits. It tastes delicious. I put in so many mangoes, it's going to taste delicious. So it can be tasty. It's going to take you some time to develop that taste. Yeah.
So there's this new thing about plant-based meat. It somehow makes you feel less guilty for consuming it. I've tried it. It tastes terrible. I don't like it. It feels like, I'm trying to do something which is not very authentic. And I'm also imagining that if you have to make plant-based meat, how much of processing should a plant, like what kind of killing process of the plant should go that it evolves into something else, emulsified, to get the texture of meat? Is it healthy?
Amazing. Love this. Long story short, you rather eat meat. But if you're vegan and this core ethical principle of not hurting animals is so important to you, but you still miss meat, you love the texture of meat, you have this option. We're in a world where we have choices now. So it's amazing. For those who choose not to hurt animals or eat animals, or they have this. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, nutrition-wise, not much nutrition in there. It's actually made with gluten, which is found in certain grains like wheat. So when you stretch out gluten and you use gluten to, so it's found in, you take wheat maida or even whole wheat, and you stretch it out, it gives that texture. So soy and gluten is very popular in making this plant-based meat. So it's not the killing of plant per se, but it's using. So yeah, it's a very processed product. It's a very processed product. I love to use it in places where when a client is very serious about overcoming their health condition and wants to eat plant-centered, does not want to take in animal foods at all, and they want to eat something that tastes like meat once in 6 months.
Okay.
You have that option.
You have that option.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not drastic. It's okay. It's
okay.
a choice that is available,
Yes.
and we can exercise that choice if we want.
It's not nutrient dense. Don't think of it as a nutrition food and eat it.
Yeah.
It's for the taste and the pleasure.
Right.
It's for those who miss the taste and texture of meat. It's a transition food for those who really want to eat plant-centered but need some buffering stage to get to that.
Awesome. So we've spoken about food, and I have had so many insights, and like I'm close to inspired to go back and try a lot of, new things that is not a part of my diet yet. But you also said something very interesting in the beginning about when we are thinking about wellness as a whole concept, not just food and emotions, but there's also something about community living, what we are doing with people around us, what is our lifestyle and choices. And I know in Nature Will, when we walk in, it's not like any other restaurant. There is a slowness to that. There is a mindfulness built into that space. Nobody needs to say it, but it's a felt experience. So I wanted to hear about how has life changed for you after this, the cancer episode. What does living mean to you right now? Living with family, with what do relationships mean to you?
Wow, it's a deep question. It's extremely joyful living. And the joy is not because everything is rosy and it's pretty and everything is, which it may have been before. Before I lived in some sense of glamour and lux, But now it's real. There is so much joy in what we do, which is I work with people as a nutritionist, and I do sessions where we have these retreats where we work with people on healing through food, and it feels like everything is in such ebb and flow. Every challenge that comes up to run this place, in the moment, the challenge feels like the end of the world. Yeah. But in that same moment, you're so excited about it because it's repeated so many times where you know that this is giving way to something new and exciting. You're learning something from this. Something amazing is coming out through this challenge. And that awareness in every moment. What most people say, maybe I live, breathe, think, talk, this work. It's not work for me. It's an everyday thing to wake up, to make food, to make sure everyone's making that food, to serve that food, to talk to the guests who come to the center.
Yeah. Do you feel whatever has happened so far has led you to this?
Absolutely.
It's like the design of your life was this, so there was a backstory to it.
The best thing that happened to me was that diagnosis. The best thing.
Wow. I don't know if many people would, see it that way, but just look at you.
Just imagine I was a flight attendant and it was an amazing life. And now I I got the chance to study a different subject altogether, in my early 30s. And move into a completely different field and set up something with a whole tribe now. And we're all working towards...
It seems like you're flying without flying, just your vibe. Like there's something about the lightness. Yeah. So how important is love in this journey of wholeness, of wellness, of body wisdom? What do you think of love?
The most important. Love towards self, love towards your journey first. If when you set something up like this, which is so niche, and I may say ahead of its time, we're the only restaurant that's serving 100% vegan, but not just vegan. We don't have any oil at all. No sugar, no jaggery, no white rice, no gluten, no wheat products in our cafe, in our restaurant. We teach people, we have a cooking academy that teaches people to cook like this at home to reverse or prevent diseases.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I saw the weekend classes that you run. Yeah.
So it's very different. We're doing retreats that are not residential. It's very new. To create this category, to work with people on this, it's new. You are really faced with a lot of challenges. You do question yourself a lot. And that's when love plays a role. Because you have to remind yourself that
The why of it.
why are you doing this and why, and then look for the magic in every moment. Like, this is magical, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
I met you at the cafe and look,
Yeah.
I get
We
this
didn't know
opportunity.
each other. I just
Yeah.
sat, I ate your food. There's an experience of something in the environment. I said, I have to talk to Upasana.
So so love is playing a big role.
Yeah.
Love for the people who are working with you.
Yeah.
So my partner Lakshmi, both of us run this place together. So what we both bring in, the team members, I mean, she's a musician, so we do sundowners with music, because healing music and healing frequencies, that plays such a big role in healing roles, or in a healing journey for anybody. And when you're all coming there to a place, when you walk in, like you said, it looks like most people think they're confused, where is the cafe? They can't. And that's intentionally kept in that way, because it's called Natureville Holistic Wellness Center. It's not just the food. It's all these little things.
Yes. Many elements to that.
Many elements.
Yeah.
It's a high focus on intention and energy while cooking. We start our day with laughter and just joy. We have a very simple policy at work. As soon as you walk in to work, especially into the kitchen, we're always going to greet each other with the widest smile and the most exciting, like as if you're meeting each other after millions of years. And we just said bye to each other 10 hours ago, and that's what life in the kitchen is. You're always in the kitchen. Yeah. But our culture is to be excited, because that goes into the food.
Yeah.
And that's felt.
Yeah.
When you're eating it.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So they say, right, your driver and your cook should have good energies, because they're closest to, what you are putting inside your body, and also for your safety.
Yeah.
And what a joy to be actually having that as a practice, and what it does to people who eat that food. I read somewhere, Upasana, that during, in a certain culture, that when you went to a doctor or a shaman and you said, I'm not feeling well, they would ask you back, when was the last time you sang, you danced, or you swam in the sea? And this was their prescription. Lie down under the stars, go swim in the sea, go laugh, take a walk, and things like that. I feel like in the modern world, we've forgotten to see the stars or sing or dance, or we do it just too obsessively and professionally. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of these weekend dance classes. It's competitive. It's like in those 3 hours, I have to learn these 10 steps and perform. So I thought it's good, and I went. It was so competitive. I felt so stressed out. I've never been inspired to go to another class to learn. Yeah, it's fun, it's joyful. But then I'm guessing when you indulge in something like that, it's slightly more different. Yeah, and I know that at Natureville, you also have these movement classes. Talk me through it. What does it do to the body, and why should we move?
So, God made us in a way with multiple movable parts to our body.
Simple, plain, logical, straightforward.
It's very simple. And I must acknowledge this and say this out. I've never been to a gym. I absolutely despise the idea of a workout.
Okay.
I don't like that, because it's so structured. exactly what you felt in that dance class. Felt like everybody was judging you and everyone is checking each other out, and I just didn't feel so I'm not inspired to walk into a gym. I also find it, like I said, nature's always teaching you something. So because we have all these movable parts to our body, if you look at yesteryears and people who had muscles, it wasn't because they lifted deadlifts, they did certain kinds of specific kgs on reps or whatever.
It was just natural.
It was
rip
natural
they had, yes.
because they built their house, they went and farmed, they grew their own food, they carried things, they did everything.
Yeah.
So my journey is about making sure that I use my body as much as I can throughout the day.
Okay.
I don't like having in my home, I don't like having any help. And I haven't had so in the last 15 years. And why this happened? Because I lived in the Gulf where there was no concept of help. So I had to do everything myself. So when I came here, I'm like, why should we have help now? If I could do it now,
Because
I
it is
doing.
possible in India. Your help will have another help. My cook has a cook. Yeah. Wow. And you do everything by yourself.
So there is no everything, no. It's it's just living. It's just like the first thing I like doing is cleaning. So you go and you dust and you do, you broom and you mop and then you do your laundry. It's very simple. Like you move your body. And then if you move your body with intent, then it's movement because I now want to move or I have specific goals. Like I want to build muscle. I want to look a certain way, aesthetic reasons. I want to play a sport. I want to train myself for a marathon. So if you have that intent, then you work towards that and you set your time for that. And that can be done in multiple ways. So the idea of movement therapy at Natureville came about because I did not like the idea of structured movement. I love dance. I did spend a lot of time, not professionally training, but I was very interested in belly dancing. And there I understood that it wasn't the way it looked to be now sensual. It was actually for women who were preparing to become mothers, to prepare their womb.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Now it's like if I'm a mother and I have like a little belly, then I don't want to go do belly dancing.
So it was not at all about what it is right now. It's about the connection of the hip and that energy. And it was with fully clad women, completely dressed. The original, you look at Egyptian belly dancers, you're completely dressed. And you just wear little, maybe jingles around just to understand that movement. Mm-hmm. So you move your hips and you move your body and your arms and you strengthen your legs.
Wow.
And that was I've lost touch with that. I would really love to get
I wish
back.
something like that could come back.
Yeah, it can. It's there, I guess. Yeah,
it's there.
It's there.
Wow. Okay.
So, and now things like animal flow and different kinds of movement. I have a really close friend who teaches animal flow, but also teaches using, mudgars and the old traditional way, the gadas, to move your body in traditional ways. You didn't move your body in structured ways like that. You move the entire body. And so movement therapy or movement is when you're moving your entire body in with an intent, but also like in the kitchen when I'm a lot in the kitchen. I try to set in a few thoughts where we never bend with our back. Of course we do, but we try to do like squats when something has fallen down. We pay attention to our posture. We do a lot of stretches because when you're working in the kitchen, you're moving like that. Or I'm equally on the chair and doing nutrition counseling for people. So you're slouching and you're sitting at the computer for long hours. So my days are either a full day at the kitchen or a full day on the computer with a client. So moving, stretching, you can walk around, you can place your computer and, walk around and have standing desks.
Absolutely.
So I think moving with intent.
Moving with intent.
Important.
Okay. Any other words of wisdom? Because I feel like every part of this conversation has been enlightening for me in many ways and very, very inspiring and also so curious to go and try a lot of these things. The way I look at food, also my big confusion around veganism, the guilt with, veg versus non-veg, my clarity towards plant-based wholesome nutrition. I have so much to think about, and thank you for that. This has been one of the most impactful conversations for me personally as well, on a subject that I know a little. All of us think we know about food because we are eating it 3 times a day. But do we really know our food well? Yeah. If there was one wisdom you want to leave us with, what would that be? For overall wellness, not even health, not even physical body. If there's one thing from your life that you want to share with us.
I think my biggest effort or work is to, I don't know how to put this in one, but I'll try. It's to be, I'm extremely passionate, and that passion comes from just solely surrendering to whatever it is. So if you can, if your intent is to, eat more plants, eat more, I want to pick on one thing. You said guilt with food, and I think a lot of people feel guilt with food. And we have to, and which is why I mentioned earlier, when you're eating, because food is for celebration, food is for culture, for tradition, emotional reasons. People are not aware of processing, how to process their emotions, so they end up eating. So if you are in that category where you're eating something because it's Diwali and I'm eating sweets, I don't think we should be guilty around that. I think we need to focus on balance. And maybe I'm going to have a big salad with chana and, vegetables and some bottle gourd and some rich gourd and some raw veggies. I'm making a big veggie bowl and balancing that out. It's all about that balance. There is no perfection. There's only progress. And that happens when you surrender to it. You can never know. We think we know a lot about food, nutrition. Nutrition is the latest science, and it's changing every minute. So eating more closer to nature, nobody got too sick because they ate vegetables and fruits and dals and chana and rajma. Nobody got too sick because of that.
Right. So one insight I have is, if somebody says blueberries is expensive, then, now I know it's grown locally as well. It's a matter of time.
And I'd love to say one thing. I think one food can never make you sick. So one food can never heal you also. So, you have this concept of eat this food for this superfood concept.
Yeah.
That doesn't make so much sense. It's about what you're doing all day. What's your feeling when you're making your breakfast? If you're making, let's say some oats porridge or whatever, you're putting fruits on a plate. What are you feeling? How are you? So it's, what are you doing all the time? You can't just, have jeera water every morning and say, oh, I've reversed diabetes. No, it's about what you're doing all the time.
One last question. Say for some odd reason, one day I didn't eat veggies or fruits. Maybe I was just traveling. Maybe I was on a flight. Maybe I'm in a hotel. Maybe I'm in a place where I didn't have access to. And I ate curd rice or I ate porridge. Is it okay?
Everything is okay.
Everything is okay.
Everything
this
is okay.
What I wanted to hear.
Let me very quickly run you through a healthy day. Start your day with fruits as raw as possible. It could be a salad. It could be, and by salad, I mean, just sprouts and cucumber and things like that. It could be fruits, preferably fruits in the morning. And then you eat a breakfast if you're hungry. If you can make a meal out of fruit and let's say seeds and things like that, then great. If you can do a smoothie, like I love doing the best breakfast on earth, which is greens, a lot of, different greens. You change your greens every day. Greens, fruits. I put in some flax seeds, some hemp hearts. I put in amlas and dates into my smoothie every day. And I've been doing this for 9 years. So this is that big smoothie. And I have one in my bag right now as well, which is, I do 750 ml of it because that keeps me full. Okay. And try to stay raw until lunch. Try to stay raw until lunch, where you're making a meal out of these things. Maybe out of smoothies, out of fruits. Then you have a good meal, and your meal at lunchtime. At lunchtime, your meal should always have a salad, which is as much as possible. If you're at home, maybe 5 or 6 colors in that salad, different vegetables. Always some palya, vegetable, sabzi, some sabzi always. Some whole grain, either having brown rice, millet, ragi rotis, ragi chapatis, ragi dosas, millet jawar rotis, whatever you want. And protein. It is important to have protein. India is not understanding that. We think of a patla, watery dal or a sambar as protein. That's not protein. That's not enough protein. You want to make sure that you have, it should be visible. Your dals or your chana should be, at least one meal should have tangible protein, like either tofu or chana or rajma or avarikai or double beans, or you look at the shop and you'll see all moong dal, masoor dal, tur dal, all of these. So it should be visible. So your plate should have these 4 things: raw veggies, cooked veggies, whole grains, and proteins in the form of lentils and legumes. It's good enough, but don't call a watery dal protein. Don't call a sambar full of vegetables protein. That can be this vegetable, and you can have maybe just sprouts or something on the side. And then end your meal with some dates and figs and with some peanut butter and salt and chocolate or cacao nibs or a piece of dark chocolate. And when you do this, you feel great. Dinner, same thing. Every time you eat a meal, there should be 4 components on it. Snacks. Snack on nature's fast food, which is fruits, nuts, seeds. Make your own. Toast some peanuts with, some dates. Make some chicky balls out of it. So things that are single ingredient, that's a snack. Nuts, all the seeds, any fruit, maybe some hummus and carrot.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Upasana. I can't tell you how grateful I am for this conversation and for your time and for your wisdom and just sharing your life experience so openly with me and for all our viewers. I wish you the very, very best, and I'm sure there's so much to learn from you. Grace Cafe.
Yeah, Cafe Grace,
Nature Will. That's in Tipsandra?
Yes.
In Tipsandra.
On Suranjan Das Road, opposite Bemel.
Yeah, beautiful place. Must visit. I know you're also taking it to the nature. So something.
Hopefully. That's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. And if people want to look up on your courses that you teach during the weekends, where can they find more information?
www.natureville.in or in natureville.holistic on Instagram.
Okay.
Or just come.
We'll have that inserted in our video here. Okay.
Just come by. We're always there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I wish you the very, very best.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this conversation with you. Thanks.
Well, you heard this conversation. Many, many, many things for you to go try out, to read up, to experience, maybe even go to a class and figure it out. And if any of this resonated with you, consider sharing it. See you next time with a new guest.